Hello, good evening. My name is Tucker Johnson, and I am your host today as we experience a special edition of Nimdzi Live, where we are introducing an exciting new format that brings our Lessons in Localization series to life. For those of you that are new to it, Nimdzi's Lessons in Localization reports highlight how localization is done at some of the world's leading brands. These deep dives explore the strategies, technologies, and innovations that make these companies true global leaders. Today's conversation will feature one of the dozens of companies that are highlighted in our published research available at nimdzi.com, and I encourage you to check out the available research there. If you haven't already done so, make sure that you are subscribed to or following Nimdzi Live on your platform of choice. We're coming to you live on LinkedIn, X, Facebook, and of course YouTube, where all of our old Nimdzi Live episodes are archived. So without any further ado, I want to get right into it today. I'm not going to waste a bunch of time with a bunch of plugs and advertisements today because we have an exciting couple of guests here from Adobe. Adobe is much more than the company behind PDFs. Known for revolutionizing industries with tools like Photoshop, Illustrator, Premiere Pro, and Adobe Experience Cloud, Adobe is also at the forefront of delivering personalized digital experiences on a global scale. But how does Adobe ensure its products resonate with users in every market worldwide? In this episode, this is your chance to peek behind the curtain of Adobe's globalization strategy and learn from the best in the industry. And we've got a couple of guests joining us today, starting with Ankush Sharma, who is the Senior Director and Head of Globalization Engineering, Digital Media, and DALP. No idea what those acronyms stand for, but maybe you're going to let us know when we get to it. He leads Adobe's globalization engineering initiatives. He is based in India and has been with Adobe for over 2 decades, and his team is spread across the US, India, and Japan campuses. His global team has played a key role in developing scalable platforms and integrating advanced machine translation and generative AI solutions, enhancing multilingual content delivery. By fostering cross-functional collaboration and optimizing processes, Ankush ensures high-quality, localized user experiences across diverse markets. And also we have Priscilla. Priscilla Knoble is a Senior Director of International Strategy and Product Management. She was born and raised in Japan with complete fluency in the language. She has a unique viewpoint that has benefited US-based companies. She spent the majority of her adult career working for major software companies like Adobe and Microsoft, helping them to understand the positive business and financial impact of culturalized product offerings and the top and bottom line. Welcome to the show. I could go on. You guys both have pretty impressive resumes. I could go on with the intros, but I say it's probably about time to get right into it. Why don't I turn it over to you and let you introduce yourself? What did I leave out in the introduction here? Ankush, let's start with you.
No, all good, Tucker. First of all, great to be here and great to be in the company of Priscilla and you. So it's always a pleasure to talk about Adobe and particularly globalization at Adobe. Uh, Basically, I deal with making sure all our products, all our releases, everything that content that is generated for Adobe by Adobe gets out into the market to as many international customers in as many languages as they prefer to have it in. And that's my goal, making sure international customers are fully catered to in terms of what Adobe provides and what Adobe stands for, making content be able to viewed globally across the world in as many cultural and regional aspects that need to be catered to. I'm the one to look for to kind of do that for Adobe. So I manage the whole of engineering part of localization, which is to do with ensuring where content, when content gets authored, it gets published and delivered to the outside world. This takes care of all our businesses, including the document cloud, the creative clouds, aspects of what you read out as DALP, which is the publishing unit. And it deals with a lot of uh, you know workflows that define how content gets generated and how content gets transformed. Now we'll talk about more about Gen AI and what roles they play in the whole transformation process. But I guess I'll rest it at that I am the person who is making sure all engineering aspects for making content, which includes products, support, releases, be available to the international markets.
Excellent. Thank you for joining. So you're the guy that gets stuff localized. Priscilla, you have more of a strategic role, I would say,
Yeah,
right?
I think, Ankush and I, we always kind of say we're two sides of a coin, not the bad penny, we're the good pennies. And so I think it takes both of us to try to get everything out the door. I just want to say I love what Nimdzi's doing in this lessons in localization, because I think it was C.S. Lewis that said the older you are, like the less you know. And we really try to constantly stay on top of everything that's out there and be best in class and talk to a lot of companies and things, but we can always learn from what's going on in the market, because things move so fast. So I just think this is great. So thanks for having us here, and being allowed to share what we do. So I'm a little bit different on the other side. So as Ankush said, they do all the localization, the process, the tools, all of that. My team, we sit on an engineering or in a product group at the end of the day. But in that business product group, our job is to be thinking about strategy at a high level, umbrella level, of what does that mean for Adobe as we sell into some 213 or more countries around the world. And we have products that go into these countries, even if they're not all localized. So what does that mean? Where is the opportunity? Where are our marketing people and our sales people? How can we optimize them? And just looking at that, where that comes together between our go-to-market folks and our product folks. And so we try to bridge that gap and say, if here's the business and the finance and the marketing and the opportunities and where we really want to be and where we see growth and where we see new customers or where we see things in the emerging, like in the global south, et cetera, what do we do with that? How do we take that back to the product team, who are very focused on the core product and what do they need to do to make it successful everywhere? And we try to layer in then where they need to focus when it comes to specific features for various countries. For culturalization, what is it that will make that product resonate most with the highest opportunity countries? And when we want to experiment and go into new regions, what do we do then, and how do we make business cases for them in all of these things? And then how do they then turn to Ankush's team and execute on those? And then we come back and look at the data and see whether or not that was successful. So we really have on our side sort of a strategic viewpoint in how we go after and deliver products to our customers around the world.
Excellent. And so it's kind of hand in hand. I imagine you two work very closely together. And
Absolutely.
I talked to a lot of localization directors at a lot of different companies, and typically they're more of an Ankush than a Priscilla, right? They're more just, not just, it's a lot, right? But more focused on localization. And then the strategy, the market entry, all of that stuff's kind of decided at the C-suite, and there's not a lot of collaboration. So that's one thing that I really got from reading through the lessons in localization report, is that it seems like there's a high level of collaboration and everything's just kind of centralized with people working towards the same goal when it comes to localization.
I think that's true. I mean, I think at Adobe, product teams still, they run the show, wouldn't you say, Ankush? I
Oh,
mean, at
sure.
the end of the day, it's Photoshop and it's
Yeah,
Acrobat.
yeah.
And so they do make decisions on where they're going to go.
Oh,
I
okay.
come in and make recommendations, right? So we'll come in and make recommendations, and we're really at the point where they'll come and say, where do you recommend we go next? Because we've been in these countries for a long time. Where do you recommend? And that's where we'll come in and recommend. But that's the one interesting, I think, about Adobe, that some people sometimes think we don't have a sort of a tops down Shantanu or David Wadhwani says, do this. We basically have a group of products that decide under the category digital imaging, so Photoshop, Lightroom, et cetera, or under DVA, what they're going to do and how they're going to do. And there are many teams kind of funneling into the information, but we try to make sure that the best information is there for them and the best business cases, et cetera, to move forward.
And so once they decide what those languages are going to be or what new markets are going into, then I imagine they reach out to you, Ankush, and your team. And what does that process look like? Is everything centralized through you, or are there other localization departments, or is it central? And of course, I kind of know the answers to some of these questions because I read the lessons in localization report. But tell us how that's structured.
Yeah, so there is a, so first of all, globalization is a part of the whole life cycle of a product, and it starts early. It has to start early. But nonetheless, if you look at, there's the word globalization is a bit overloaded, and localization is underrated, in the sense that, there is aspects of internationalization, externalization, culturalization that go into it to make the whole product become really a natural fit into that market,
Mm.
if I may call it that way. uh, for that to happen, you have to start very early in the whole process. And if a new feature has to come in, it needs to be looked at whether it's globally correct or it needs to be addressed from a cultural aspect and regional aspects at the time when it is being designed, when it is being architected. Everything has to be looked at. Now, there is a life cycle that is within Adobe, and that life cycle governs where globalization gets in, where this coupling happens between product teams and globalization, and what kind of uh, aspects of cultural relevancy needs to be brought in into the feature right from the design start of it. Now, after all this is done, localization follows, and it's a natural thing. That once you have designed the product, the feature is ready, you need to create support and content around it. You need to make sure that the feature can get, the product UI can get localized and those kind of things. That's a part of the service life cycle that Adobe runs for each product, wherein we are called upon, and we are part of that function group where we fit into the service life cycle to localize it. But I would say uh, we get to know about the feature very early, and then we get to talk to the product teams right at the start based on the life cycle of the feature itself, going through design, architecture, and all that stuff, and finally getting localized and tested and being released to the different markets.
And you say we. How big is your team?
So my team is a cross geo team.
Uh huh.
I have my so whole team is around 170, 180 people,
Wow.
and we have almost like 30 people in US and around 10 people in Japan, because these are our big markets, and we need to be very, very strongly aligned with them and very closely knit with them. We need to have a pulse of the market and need to understand if any support issues come in, then how do we deal with them. So it's spread globally, and the biggest part of that team is in India, which is around 120 people or so.
Interesting. And I want to talk, and I think this is, if there's a question for both of you, then great. But I think it might be more of an Ankush question. We'll get back to you. Don't worry, Priscilla. The Globalization World Readiness Program. Whose darling is this? Is this you, Ankush, or is this Priscilla? Because when I was reading about this in the Lessons in Localization report, I'm like, yes, more companies need to be doing this, and I think more companies know they need to be doing it. It's just a matter of getting the investment, executive buy-in, all of that stuff. But could you tell us more about what is the Globalization World Readiness Program?
It actually, before Ankush jumps in, this was actually a joint effort back in, so I've been here 28 years, and we in 2006, I think, we
Yeah,
started this process where he's not here anymore, but the one that used to be in charge of globalization. And we both sat down and said the problem is that product teams, there needs to be standardization.
Mm-hmm.
And we did what we call the dog and pony show. And we literally built this with some guys that are still on the team and of what it was. And then we went to every product team that was here at the time. We're much bigger now, but I think we had like 30 some products back then. And we went to every team and met with engineering, product management, program management, QA, and sent them through this process. But it's much better, because you can talk about it now, how well formed it is now.
Now, I was going to say that it was a combined effort, and it continues to be a combined effort, although we are not.
Well,
I mean, it's
first of
a
all, for those of the listeners who haven't read it yet, what is it? Because I was just very
okay.
cryptic. What is the Globalization World Readiness Program? Can you explain to us what it is?
Yeah. So when we release a product in the market, we generally tend to say, and wow, it's a great product, and it's all. And we have only looked at the English release of that product. How does that product look like when you open up a German release, a French release, a Japanese release, and for that matter, a Hindi release or any other language? And there are so many languages that we localize and release into. So we tend to look at our bigger market. I mean, this is a natural thing, and
Sure,
I
sure.
think Adobe has come a long way from where it was to where it is now, in terms of respecting and looking at every needs of the international market, not just one specific market which has the highest ARR.
Hmm.
So what we have to ensure is that every language, every locale, every cultural aspect, and I mean, to be fair, we can't look at all cultural aspects in one go, but we tend to push on product teams to make sure that the relevancy of each language is as important as it is for English. And for that, we try to compare that if this feature works in English, how does it look like and how does it work for that? And we do a scoring accordingly. And when I say feature, I think I am generalizing it, but it's not feature. It can be also including how much of support, how much of content, how much of everything that goes for our main marketing languages. How does it look like when it goes in all other languages? And that's a rate card that we create, a scorecard that we create across products, across languages of each product, and try to go back to product team and say, here is where you're not doing good. So that is what we used to do. And after some time, it became like the product teams themselves have had access to this card. So they knew where they were not doing good. We have this very good, and that's probably, I don't know. I mean, it was designed by Priscilla, a very good GUI where we kind of reflect on where in a whole big canvas of all our products and all that languages, it's like a huge chart with some 100 rows of products and some 50 columns of languages that we want to get into and aspire for across products. And then we fit in the dots where it is doing good, where it is not doing good, what is a green, what is a yellow, and if it is a yellow, what can we do to make it green? That is what the Globalization World Readiness Program is. We want our products to be world ready, and there are two aspects of being world ready. One, my product is world ready, but we have made a conscious decision that we don't want to launch that product in that market for whatever business reasons that Priscilla can talk about. But we are still ready. As soon as you tell us, we'll go ahead and launch it. But the other part is that we have already launched it and we are not doing so great on some aspects of this. Both these aspects are covered as part of the World Readiness Program.
I would add one more thing, Tucker, if it's okay. I think one of the interesting things about being at a company that is 42, almost 43 years old, is that, things have changed significantly and we constantly have to iterate to figure out where things are at. So the World Readiness Program at that time was really looking at, like Ankush said, the internationalization. Where's the code at? Is it ready? And localization. Do we then localize the UI? Because we were basically selling tools. And we'd sell a box to somebody at Photoshop and we didn't care what they did with it or know what they did with it. Now that we're in the cloud and subscription and we're in this world now in 2024, we are selling experiences. And that means content has significantly changed. We used to give them maybe a couple fonts or, something, and now it's everything. And so the world of what we have to offer, my team also does, outside of strategy, we do product management. So we do sometimes deep diving with product teams on exact features that have to be done. And we also do global data analytics and look at very deep dive analytics. And all of that is relatively new in, I shouldn't say all of it, but it keeps changing. And so the work that Ankush and team is doing when we say world ready has also changed so much. And what we have to deliver and look at is also, really interesting now. We started this program maybe 10 years ago where we took world readiness and we made it even more into what we call I-47N at Adobe, which is really, you take, the sort of culturalization, or L10N for localization. And so we made this Adobeized word, internationalization, which for us is the code ready from a world readiness, those exact things that Ankush was talking about. Localization, can we make the decision then, because it's already internationalized on the code, to localize based on our business where we want to go? And then culturalization, is there a need for any given country or product to significantly offer something that resonates much closer to what a customer might want than just a tool? And that I-47N is really where we've moved, and now we're even iterating on that even further.
Well, to me, this is really fascinating, and I see your question in chat. I'll get to that. But I just want to say this is super fascinating because, like, you both have been at Adobe literally for decades. So, to me, that's the program benefits from that when you have people that are growing with their program and helping evolve the program over time, because you have that history, you have that institutional knowledge, all of that stuff. But I talked to, and we at Nimdzi talked to all sorts of different clients out there doing globalization, and this is something that was, you talk about it as if it's just taken for granted. Oh yeah, we implemented this 15 years ago and it's going pretty darn well. But a lot of folks out there would love to have this sort of situation. What I mean by that is the product teams are essentially listening to you. They're valuing your input. And a lot of different organizations, it's a struggle to get anything across to the product teams. It's kind of like the power dynamics are such that the product teams do whatever the heck they want, and localization just has to catch up. So I just say that to say, nice job. That was something that really stood out to me when I was reading through your lessons in localization report.
It's not that easy. Well, I will say localization, they absolutely rely on Ankush and team to do everything, and it's fantastic. It's not that simple, but I will say that today, our fiscal year starts in December, and we've had the kickoff for FY25, and the sales kickoff was today. And I was listening to Shantanu speaking to our head of our sales, Stephen Friedman, and everything is about, hey, international. That is where future growth continues to come. We always talk about that. Everybody does. Then he was asked, Shantanu was asked, what's the most important thing? And he goes, it's product. Right. And that really is, I think, where Ankush and I, like, when we sit there and we talk to product teams and everything else, it's about how does Adobe continue to have global growth? And it's all about the product. That's where we have to focus.
Well, and we're going to get into AI. Really quick question. I want to backtrack really quickly. Ankush, a question for you that I saw in chat. Just talking about your team size. Do you mean that you have 10 localization engineers in Japan and 60 in total globally?
So I guess the interpretation that is there is that a lot of work that we do with the customers happen through these engineers. That's not really what is meant out here. Yes, so to answer the question, yes, we have 10 engineers in Japan and around 30 engineers in US, and the rest are in India. A lot of localization, what it entails is back-end work. It means a lot of things that go behind the scenes rather than in front with the customers. It's more to do. How do you transform the content? How do you make sure that it works in a way? And we're going to talk more about it, I guess. It transforms in a way that is cost effective, that is agile, and that is very, very high end quality. Those aspects are what is taken through the back-end teams back in India. Even my teams in US and Japan, they are not really interfacing directly with the customers, but they are there to assess the markets, in the sense if new needs come up which culturally relevant, then we can develop it. So they will work with the with the team that is engaging with the market to make sure we get feedback where we can develop and act as extensions of the product team to make it happen. So I don't know in which way this question was put, but the point I was trying to make is that yes, we have a globally diverse team, But that doesn't essentially mean that this globally diverse team is directly engaging with the market. That's not our focus area. We are more into making sure that the product gets culturally relevant in those different areas. And by the way, we don't go into French, German, which are as much a primary market for us as is Japan and US.
Makes sense. Thank you for that. Well, moving on, I pulled up the report here, and I'm going through it, and there's so much good stuff. I want to talk to you. I'll just say this. I want to get to the talking about how you set your global vision and strategy. What are some of the ideas that I know it's super small? Um,
What did we write?
I know, right? It's like, oh, what did I tell those Nimdzi researchers? No, it's talking about like, your global market analysis, how you identify strategic markets, and kind of the process that goes into that, and your constantly iteration, all of that stuff. I want to get to that, but you mentioned product is king, and we've made it so far, almost half an hour into this podcast, without talking about AI, which I'm proud of. But let's just let the cat out of the bag and talk about AI now. And I think it's an interesting conversation, particularly with you folks, because when I ask about how is AI affecting the work that you're doing, it's kind of there's two parts, at least two parts that I can see to that question. The first is how is it affecting the actual localization processes and workflows, machine translation, workflow automation, culturalization, all of that stuff. How is it affecting the actual localization practices? The second part is how is it affecting your product? Because you're operating in a market that is already being heavily impacted by AI. I know the AI people say everything's going to be affected, but let's be real. Some products are going to be more affected than others. And image generation, image editing, that kind of stuff is something that's really going to be hit significantly, affected significantly by AI. So I'll stop talking and just ask, how is AI affecting what you're doing over there at Adobe?
I'll
So
start with product really quick and then let Ankush get into the details of the tech, some of the tech side. I think one of the things that is out in the news often, and I think people do know, is that Adobe made a choice as we looked at what was happening around us in the last 3 to 4 years, that we would primarily only take data from our vetted stock content at the end of the day, and in that way try to preserve copyright and licensing and that kind of thing. So it doesn't answer all the question of the fears that are out there among people, and I don't think Adobe has the answer, or we have the answer on how it is going to affect individuals that use our products at the end of the day, but we're trying to do the right thing as we move forward into this and look at that. That being said, it's a very exciting thing for us, and with Firefly that we're working on and other things. And as far as me and my team, I'm not in the Firefly team, that's a different team. Many products are looking at how they incorporate various kinds of Gen AI into their product. And we're always just looking at it from the cultural aspect. Is the quality of what's coming out meeting the expectation of customers and around the world? And if not, let's work on ways to try to do that and come up with ideas how to make that better. So that's how my team looks at and works with what's going on with AI right now.
yeah, first let me say that AI has been there, not like it just hit us in. So if
This
you
is true. AI has been around for a while. It's just
yeah,
become publicly accessible, or
democratized and all, right?
democratized is the
So
word I'm looking for. Yeah.
yeah, so the way I look at it, and first of all, I'll say it's very exciting times. I mean, from looking at it just from a localization world, I could have not been more excited for with anything else, with all this democratization, all things around AI that we talk about. Going back, AI has been there for more than a decade, big time. NMT,
Mm-hmm.
we call it AI, so it has to
Yep.
be. And the disruption has been coming. The only thing that is changing big time in recent years is the pace of that disruption. And to some, it might look like that it's going too fast. I mean, what you take a model today and you run through it and you make it happen, and next day you see you have to change that model because something better has come in. So the pace of disruption is much, much, much faster as compared to what it was like a decade back or maybe even 5 years back. And that disruption and that pace of disruption, what is very exciting for the localization world is how I would put it. And uh, to put it in context, I'll say that it's not like everything that goes out or comes into the market. And I was hearing another lectures where it was very aptly said that you should be skeptical about things that are coming in. It's not like everything that comes in is the best thing in the world to start using it tomorrow. You have to figure out how that fits into the ball game of my world, your world, or the world of localization, or for that matter, Adobe's world in a product setting. And that fitment is what is exciting to find out, as well as customized to the needs that you have. And that's what we have done in the last 2 years, 3 years. Uh, Before I get into talking about what we have done on the AI/Gen AI side, I'll also give you a brief hint about what we call as a globalization platform. And it's kind of globalization platform, and it's been talked about in the document that you
Yeah,
published
it was going to be one of my next
earlier.
questions. It's one of the 20 more questions I somehow need to ask you in the next 20 minutes. So
Okay,
I'm glad that you
okay,
brought it up.
okay. So globalization platform is a central hub for all of Adobe globalization needs. I mean, when you call me as the person to go to, but in the end, what we do is we have infrastructure that is put in place. On one side of that infrastructure is all the content that is getting authored, created, all the repositories that exist today where that content resides. That's on one side of that platform. And on the other side, we have a very elaborate vendor ecosystem. And that elaborate vendor ecosystem is what provides so much of value into the platform as well as into the content that gets generated. So what this platform does, it brings the best out of this AI, Gen AI, different workflows ranging from translation, transcreation, the review, the goodness of on brand through terminology, style guides, and I can keep going on. And this across all kind of contents. So you can have marketing content, you can have product UI, you can have, there are very different workflows that is supported out of the box through this globalization platform. And that's what makes it unique when you start looking at it, where you can actually transform more than 100 languages, as well as what we do today is almost like just for the internal content. And by the way, we have external content also coming in. We can talk about it later. But just for the internal content, we have almost like 2 billion words going through, and we audit each and every word. We know each and every string that goes into the system, where it resides, what it does, how it has been transformed, everything across languages and all. This is the hub and the central nervous system of all we do. Now, when we started looking at bringing in AI, we already had machine translation in it. So machine translation was a part of our workflow itself, where we were taking content in, we were machine translating it, and then we were sending it to a vendor ecosystem to figure out what's right, what's wrong, what needs to change, and accordingly publishing it out. We started looking at bringing in parallel workflows parallel to NMT, which is the Gen AI workflows. We have seen so our dimensions on which we have pivoted ourselves is basically turnaround times, which is all to do with agility, cost, and of course quality remains a very foundational thing that we don't want to compromise on. If you look at these three dimensions, there are other things that are happening in the AI/Gen AI world. Uh, so think about it like this: what we are able to do with AI, Gen AI or AI now, is to start looking at transcreation as a foundational workflow rather than translation, and that is very that's very big. I mean, we have always been talking about translating content from one to the other language, but we have never talked about transcreating content, which will provide a bigger dimension in terms of when you start looking at marketing and all that kind of stuff. So that has become possible for us now. We're running multiple initiatives to make sure how and what all kind of content can be transcreated.
And that's being powered by AI, or Gen AI,
Gen
correct?
AI, yes,
Yeah,
yes,
because
yes, of
I
course.
think the reason that we haven't seen that in years past is everyone would agree that transcreation is, in most cases, superior to translation, right? But in
Yeah,
years past, it's been cost prohibitive. It's been cost and time prohibitive. You need specialized resources, you need specialized workflows, and not only was there not technology to support it, but if you're doing transcreation properly, you're not keeping a machine translation of that. It doesn't make sense to keep them empty of transcreated
yeah,
content, right? Because you're just going
yeah,
to screw up
yeah,
your TMs. But
yeah.
now with advances in generative AI, we can plug Gen AI into that missing slot. The slot where TMs sit in the regular localization workflow can now be occupied by large language models and generative AI in the transcreation workflow. So it's basically empowering companies to take a transcreation first rather than a translation first approach.
Yeah, yeah. So let me just guide you on that in a bit. So, I mean, people should not take it that every content can be transcreated or every content should be transcreated.
Should be,
And
yes.
we're here to keep them honest at the end of the day, right? So
Yeah,
I think that it's really exciting. We're looking at LLMs. We feel like there's great progress over, there's a place right now for both MT and LLMs, but there's huge progress that we're seeing in LLMs.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, it's not like out of the box, they're just perfect, right?
No.
And so I think that's where there's still a lot of work where we're kind of going in and saying, I mean, it's kind of like a lot of the image generations aren't great at fingers, and you get 6 fingers, like you've seen all these, right? You've seen humans with the six
Yeah.
fingers.
Yeah.
Um, that's kind of what it is. Like, you do the language thing, but it's still not perfect. And our team is here too, because we do talk to customers. We do really focus on deep level expertise areas in certain area in countries and languages. So we're always the ones coming back and going, okay, that's 95% good. Let's try to make it 98.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah. And so, as Priscilla mentioned, there's another aspect that I'll just point out, which is helping us is uh, and probably this word has been used in different ways, but I'll just put it and explain it. So bringing the whole aspects of multimodal. So we have been talking only about textual content most of the time when we talked about translation and transcreation.
Mm-hmm.
But the cultural relevancy of things actually go beyond text. So if you have, and I'll first go to an image which has a text written on it. I think there's a lot that the image says as compared to what the text says. And you have to make sure that you are able to bring both these changes in a new language or transform that image which has text written on it, transform it in such a way that that image also changes or gets transformed and the text also gets transformed in the new cultural aspect of things in the new region.
Yep.
That's a big thing that you can do now. So I'm talking about multimedia content, whether you take audio, video, text, all those can be combined together in a very scalable way. And these are things that we are looking into really, really hard, where you can actually uh, go through and figure out how can I do uh, multimodal aspects of transcreation in a very fast turnaround and a cost-effective way now with Gen AI being in the picture. So that's a very powerful thing to do. And I think that's something that we are looking forward even as we speak in terms of how Adobe's content can be transformed in that way. So that's another aspect of Gen AI that comes in. And of course, as I said, everything that we talked about in terms of cost, uh, quality, and agility, that gets really rationalized through Gen AI. We're still looking at finding the optimum spot, that sweet spot,
Mm-hmm.
where you get the best of all three. I
Yeah.
mean, it's, if you increase the cost, you'll get better quality, or you uh, increase the turnaround time, you'll probably have lower cost, those kind of things. you have to find the right value, and for the right value for right content. It's not like everything, the same thing works for everywhere. So
Yeah.
that's work in progress.
And I think you're approaching it in the right way. Someone said the word skeptical. You got to be skeptical about AI, and I think that's absolutely the right way to go about to approach it. Skepticism, not over enthusiasm, but not fear either. Because I talked to some companies, and there's kind of a culture of fear around AI, where they're just not allowed to use it, and they don't want to use it. I think we need to be, now's the time to be experimenting with it, but to be remain skeptical about it.
Yeah. Yeah, another part, and probably I can go on this. Another part that I think I missed out, and probably worth mentioning here, which was not there in the legacy world, is the conversational part of Gen AI. The interactive part of Gen AI that you probably don't realize in an automated workflow. But what has happened behind the scenes is you typed in something and you wanted from, and you would have done it on GPT for sure, where you typed something, you got an answer, you said, no, I don't like that part of it, can you change it to something different, and it gives you a better answer. Then you say, no, I want it in the context of this, or in the context of that, and it gives you a new answer.
Yep.
So that conversational or interactive part of Gen AI is, I mean, if you put to use in the right way, it's going to be super effective.
Yep.
Super effective.
Super powerful.
So those aspects are so powerful that you just can't sit aside and say that, oh, this is not the great thing to do, or this is something that we will wait for others to do. I think there's so much of excitement around that, and this is getting better day by day. So if you like, you mentioned it in your document also, that you can't stand at the station and wait for the train to go. You'll be run over by it, right? I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. Well, one last question. It's kind of a practical question about AI. Before I try to move us on to a different subject here, is AI a solution to be solved in house, or is it a supply chain solution? Right? Is developing your own model, or is it a hybrid? Now, I know you're using other people's large language models and stuff like that, but specifically for Ankush and Priscilla, if you have something, chime in too. But for Ankush, for you, if you want to implement AI into your workflow, let's say implement AI into your quality assurance workflows, is this something where you're going to work with your existing localization vendors on, or is it something that you're going to try to tackle in house?
so here is how it works. You can't spend millions of dollars just trying to create your own model. It's it is
Yeah, yeah.
it is neither cost effective, nor
It's
is
going to be
it.
bad. You're going to
Yeah, it's
spend
going to
millions
be
of dollars, and
bad.
it's going to be bad.
Yeah,
Yep.
and you'll be always running into competition trying to do a better model and all that. It has to do with the use case that you're trying to solve, and I'm talking about my use case. I'm not talking about Adobe has a bigger use case, and Adobe is trying to run through with that on different aspects. So what I'm trying to aim at and get to is that there are use cases which may require models to be developed, but for things like localization and all, there are so good models already there. Why would you want to go ahead and do it on your own?
Yeah, yeah.
As in developing those models.
Mhm.
Now that is one part of it. The other part of it is, how can you customize your workflows to make the best use of those models? That's the second part. And that's why I mentioned multimodal, interactivity, all those things are workflows. Those probably doesn't need, you have a model with you, how you interact with that model is what's going to define your workflow. You will need a lot of customization in house for making sure that the workflow generates the best output. And these are aspects that we are talking with our vendors to figure out how to go about doing it. You know, there is, as you said, there is so much of democratization around this. Everyone is doing it. So I will not go ahead and create a model for sure
Yeah.
on my own.
Yeah.
Neither have we.
Yeah, I think that's
And
suicide to create your own
yeah,
model. But
and,
when it comes to implementing a model is kind of more where my question was. Like, do you trust your vendors to be using the latest technologies, or is it something that you're going to have to say, no, we need to make sure that we're using these?
so that is where the secret lies. I whatever vendor you use, I need an output, and I need some amount of transparency within the systems to get to know how it is all working out.
Hmm.
So it should not be that behind the scenes there are all humans working, while I'll get to be told that there's AI behind the scene. You know, if
I've seen
my
that.
judgment if my judgment around that in terms of what your quality estimation tool is giving, how do you go from one component of yours to the next, and all this can be validated, then I am good to go with those kind of offerings. And I need to keep multiple offerings at hand. I can't just have one offering and one thing going, and that would, because not everyone will be able to scale at the same rate and pace that they are scaling today. So I need to make sure I have the best in hand, and that is why I would go with a vendor, because I myself will not be able to scale at the same pace.
Hmm.
Today I'm there, and probably I'll say I'll scale at the fastest pace, and tomorrow someone else is there and he cannot scale, and then what happens? We go down, right? So you have to look at what's available in the market and get the best out of that. And that is where customized workflows will work. I should be able to plug in with anyone and everyone.
Excellent. Thank you. I think that answered my question. It's not surprising. It's just there's a lot of confusion around who basically there's a lot of confusion I find around whose responsibility AI is. Like who's going to end up managing everything. So I want to
See,
end here. I'm just keeping an eye on the clock, and I've been trying to find an excuse to bring this up, is because it's this beautiful little map. I don't know if this came from you or if it's something my team created in the report here. Adobe's global language support. It kind of shows all of the different markets that you guys are in, and I know you're heavily focused on 17 main languages, but you support hundreds of languages around the world as well. And I want to use this as kind of a jumping off point to say what's next at Adobe in terms of global expansion. Priscilla, you mentioned the global south, focusing on that, developing markets, new product offerings. What you got up your sleeve at Adobe when it comes to world domination?
Well, I wish. Oh, we cannot say that.
I
Tucker.
know. I was wondering if you're going to let me get away with that.
I wish we had hundreds and hundreds of languages. I think that would be the dream of any company. Maybe there is a company doing that, but I think we're always very cognizant of ROI along with our products all over the world, and we have a very. I just want to say over the years, it's just like, do people get smarter and smarter? Is it just that we have all these tools? But we have a go-to-market team. And as a part of that go-to-market team a few years ago, we started what was called the global expansion model, which we call GEM. And in that, we looked at, where do we have offices around the world, sales and marketing offices? What are the roles and responsibilities of people that we have in these offices? Which of these roles are the most critical as we hire for success in any given region that we need to have? And then we look at the opportunity. We go through everything. All the typical GDP and all of those kinds of things of what's going on there. And these models are made whereby we look at, okay, how is Adobe doing? What's our penetration rate of our products in all these regions? And are there certain industries that use things more? Is there a different makeup of enterprise versus small business versus individuals that buy things? And all of those things combined are brought together into where we look at where we want to be focusing. And when we already have, offices in multiple countries, and then we sell via VARs and others into multiple more, into hundreds more, the reality is our products sell everywhere in English. They are available in English, and people know that they can use them in English. And then there are, regions like Africa that has, English, and they have Dutch, and they have French, and they have Arabic, and some other languages that they might be able to use. So we're always looking and saying, does a customer have to have something localized? I often say I've never met a Dutch person that doesn't speak 6 languages fluently. And so they love to see things in Dutch, but is it, so we kind of make these judgment
It's
calls.
a balancing act, right? Because
really
we can sit here, those of us that are, culturally minded, world travelers, love learning languages, fluent in Japanese, we can sit here and say we respect all cultures, and the ideal is that everything's available in everyone's language, because that's, come to them on their terms. But at the end of the day, it's got to be paid for.
Yeah.
Right.
And the thing is, Ankush's team, like, they've gotten to the point where with general localization, not all the rest of it, they can do things fairly reasonably. So it's not that we couldn't do more products in more languages, but then when you think about the 360 of the support that would need to be there on all other aspects for the company and the product and the content, that's where, you have to start asking yourself, is that the right path to go down? And we're always paying attention to what's happening with social, and and who's using our products more, and is it on mobile? Do we want to do mobile products in a certain place or not? Yeah. So we're just paying a lot of attention. We have a way to sort of level the countries and the high opportunity countries, and where we want to begin doing more I don't want to say experimentation, but where we do more things in a language and see how it goes. And was that successful or not? Is that what people wanted? And my team does talk to customers. We work very much with the regions around the world. We have customer support groups in some of the countries where we really rely on them that are heavy influencers to give us information back. So we use all of that to kind of come back and say, do we want to go further, and what do we want to do? So we're looking at a number of places, but it really does come down to, are we seeing, great usage and active use in a certain language when we go forward with that? And then do we also feel like just having a product localized, is that enough? In some cases, it might be enough. In other cases, like with Adobe Express that we have out there that we're, getting out around the world, that really is reliant on templates and an experience and assets and AI and all these things that we're doing. So we would want to be able to have a really great culturalized experience for people, for that product to be successful, versus maybe something like a Photoshop where the tool is more the thing to be successful. So I can't give you an exact list of countries, but we are constantly looking at what's going on out there and looking at research in the next 10 years and where we have opportunity. And, our goal is to continue to be as culturalized as we can be with ROI, be as localized as we can be, and just to make sure that our products are as relevant as they can possibly be for the customers.
Awesome. Yeah, and I wasn't expecting to give you a list of countries on your roadmap, but I've got a good idea just from listening to you talk about kind of where your corporate head is at, what's kind of priority. Exciting stuff. Thank you. Ankush, any closing thoughts here?
So, as Priscilla said, there is so much that you can do, and hopefully there will be a time when by the click of a button, you can get any language, anywhere, any feature culturalized and all. But we are still far from there. And till we get to that point, I think it's reasonable and more logical to go ahead and charter a plan around how you can provide and sell best experiences across the world. And that's what Priscilla's team is doing. They're making sure that we target a market and we justify our presence out there. It has to be the best in the market that we can give out, as compared to just doing a decent enough job across the whole world. So I think our target is to make sure we can get to as many international customers with the best quality that we can.
Well said. Well, Ankush, Priscilla, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. Especially Priscilla staying up late for this.
Is it?
It's
you too. Yeah, no, it's all good.
It's late for me. I'm old.
I just think for everybody listening too, we get to work on any company with international. I mean, it's what I love. It's why I've stayed with this when there's been so many other options of places to go in the company. I mean, you get to work your whole career on international. The companies are lucky to have those of us that love international because we're passionate about sticking with it and trying to get it done. Every time I'm with a global group of whatever, from whatever role and responsibility, you can just tell that it's a highly passionate group for the things that they do. So I think that's great.
And I'm right there with you. And I think this speaks to, especially for us Americans, because most of us Americans can go our whole life without leaving the country or getting a passport or learning another language, right? But for those of us Americans that do love other cultures, we're very fortunate to be in this industry, to be in this space. I am a minority in my own company, and I love it, right? So it's very cool, and the enthusiasm is real. So,
Yep.
ladies, gentlemen, Ankush, Priscilla, thank you so much. I think I'm going to wrap it up here. And Ankush, it ain't evening for you, so you got work to do today.
Yeah.
I'll let you get back to it.
Yeah. I'm already getting messages out there. Yeah.
On to your next
Okay.
meeting. All right,
Yeah.
thank you
Thank
guys.
you.
I'll wrap it up here, okay? Ladies,
Thank you.
gentlemen, chat, we are out of time for today. If you enjoyed this Nimdzi Live experience, and join us next time by going to our LinkedIn page and seeing when that might be. Go to Nimdzi LinkedIn and check out the upcoming events, and you can register there. I appreciate my guests today, Ankush and Priscilla. I appreciate my colleagues here at Nimdzi Insights doing all the hard work so I can have these interesting conversations, and I appreciate you, the audience, joining us live today. I look forward to next time. Cheers.